Welcome to the Female VC Lab podcast. I'm here with Dina. In one line, give me your name, your title, and the name of your fund.
Yes, sure. I'm Dina Burkitbayeva, and I'm a founder of PsyMed Ventures.
Wonderful. So what inspired you to become a venture capitalist or an investor?
Sure. It was about 6 years ago when I was looking into the mental health space and learning about it that I realized that there was a lot of inefficiencies with the system in general. But the biggest problem that I really saw is that the existing treatments that were available to those that were seeking mental health help just were not adequate for a really large portion of the population. And to be exact, a third of the population is treatment resistant, which means that a third of the people that have clinical depression or anxiety are not able to find the solutions that they need through a prescription medication or therapy. And when I started looking into what kind of research and work was happening to help that portion of the population, I realized that there really wasn't that much happening at the time.
Mm-hmm.
That's what really inspired me to start looking into this problem to help this population. At the same time, many other people started thinking about the same thing and working on various companies that were bringing these treatments to the market. And bringing together my business and entrepreneurship background, I thought that the best way that I could support them was through investment.
Wonderful. So what is your investment thesis and what is the motivation behind your thesis?
Sure. So investment thesis is to help support entrepreneurs that are building cutting edge solutions to mental health. And we look at 4 verticals in particular. The first one is psychedelic therapeutics. As you may have heard in the last, few years, there's been a lot of very encouraging clinical data coming out of various institutions, which is showing that psychedelic therapeutics potentially have a much higher efficacy rate to treat treatment-resistant depression and conditions like post-traumatic stress disorder that to date don't have effective treatments. And based on this, there are many very interesting trials that are happening in companies that are being built to promote treatments for these indications. And as a fund, we're investing in these companies. We've made close to 20 investments at this point over the last 2 or so years. Wow. And are seeing really interesting advancements in psychedelic therapeutics. The second vertical that we're looking at is neurotechnology and neuromodulation in particular. So it is the use of various stimulation technologies, either transcranial magnetic stimulation or ultrasound, to be able to stimulate or destimulate certain parts of the brain to then promote alleviation from anxiety or depressive symptoms or address other types of indications. This is an industry that's really at a brink of big innovation coming, just because the technology has advanced to a point where we can really see it being applied effectively in humans. So we're really excited and have made a few investments in the neurotechnology space. The third vertical that we're looking at is precision psychiatry. And that's basically developing various biomarkers to be able to diagnose patients more accurately. So rather than just saying using the
schizophrenic or something, right?
So we look at mental health in particular. And there's, for depression, for example, there's a very basic questionnaire based on which a psychiatrist would be able to diagnose a patient and just give them a medication that may very well not be the right medication for that patient. On average, patients have to take around 3 medications to get to the one that works for them. And as I mentioned, a third of the population doesn't respond to medication at all. So there are very interesting companies that are developing precision psychiatry tools to be able to better diagnose a mental health disorder. And then once it's diagnosed, it can much more precisely find the right treatment for that patient based on large data sets of other patients that have a similar indication, genetic and biological makeup. So really interesting things coming here. And we believe that in the next 5 to 10 years, a lot of the guesswork and the trial and error in prescribing treatment in the mental health space will be eliminated. And the fourth vertical is digital therapeutics, and that's primarily VR and AR tools in the mental health space as well.
Wow, that's pretty. What are you currently learning or listening to or reading these days?
Oh, absolutely. Most of the things that I'm reading are not very exciting. It's very technical and scientific. We're due diligencing companies. We have to really get into it. Any publications that are either published by the team itself or things that are relevant. I would say that another book that's been very interesting to read is Your Mind on Plants, which is Michael Pollan's new book. Michael Pollan is a really big pioneer, I would say, in the psychedelic space, in the sense that I think it was thanks to him and his book, How to Change Your Mind, which came out, I believe, in 2018, really reinvigorated the psychedelic therapeutic space, which we call the third wave of psychedelics. So that's definitely a really interesting read.
Wonderful. So the famous bonus question, everyone gets it. In 2 years, how do you see venture capital or investing changing or evolving as an industry?
Sure. I think venture as an asset class has really expanded, right? Not just by the amount of dollars that have been raised and deployed, but also the type of investors that are entering. It used to be much more delineated in that hedge funds, asset managers, private equity firms stayed in their own lanes, let's say. However, what we're seeing now is that those large groups of investors are starting to dabble into what would usually be considered more venture type deals. And on the other hand, we also have super angels, because there's so much money that's been made in venture capital or through startups, that these large super angels are coming in and sometimes leading rounds or creating very large family offices that are also then entering into the venture space. So I think that trend is not going to stop. I think it's only going to accelerate, which is going to further expand the venture capital space and the amount of money that's going in, which is positive because there's going to be more innovation and startups funded. But as a venture capitalist, I also see a trend that it's going to become much more competitive to get access to the best deals. That's definitely something that we're mindful of, and building a good reputation, a good team, and really bringing value to our portfolio companies to be able to remain competitive, because the funding side is just becoming larger and larger.
Wonderful. So how do people contact you?
Sure, absolutely. People can learn more about PsyMed Ventures on our website at PsyMed Ventures, PsyMed.ventures, and PsyMed is spelled PSYMED.ventures. And people can always find me on LinkedIn. I would be happy to connect.
Wonderful. So thank you so very much, Dina from PsyMed Ventures, for being our guest on the Female VC Lab podcast.